For a couple of years now, there has been a very popular SpongeBob theory. And if you read the title, you already know what it's about. The robot invasion theory. This theory, developed by YouTuber Alex Bale, tells us about the conspiracy taking place in Bikini Bottom, where they have been developing malevolent plans to slowly replace the citizens of Bikini Bottom with robots, which will take over the city and maybe even the Seven Seas. Kind of like Skynet, but in a Nickelodeon cartoon. This, by the way, is one of the most well-known facts about the future of the show, thanks to the SP-129 episode, which shows us the future controlled by machines in one of the clearest signs of continuity within the series. Something that becomes more interesting knowing that at least one of the main characters has already been replaced. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The first thing to make very clear is that the original theory comes from Alex Bale, a YouTuber known for his crazy SpongeBob theories and for his work on various ARGs. So if you want to see for a moment the first one who investigated all that, we left a video in the description. Although I should mention he was missing several details. The robot invasion conspiracy arises first of all from the appearance of multiple robots across several seasons, with strange behaviors and out-of-place programming. For example, they have modes that allow them to attack fish, as in the episode Tunnel of Glove. In this episode, Bob, Patrick and Pearl go to a fair, where one of the main attractions is a boat ride through a romantically themed tunnel. The ride features several animatronics, but Pearl and Bob's boat get stuck in the tunnel due to a malfunction. Patrick, who was outside the tunnel, tries to help them, so as he enters the on-site power plant, he accidentally presses a button that says something like animatronic override. But it causes all the robots that were on the course to put aside their friendly masks and start attacking Bob and Pearl in the best FNAF style. Which leaves us with a very important question. Why on earth would the robots have it in their programming to attack the visitors? Another chapter with a more or less similar situation is Krusty Cleaners, where Bob confronts a robot who is in charge of cleaning and keeping the offices in order. This confrontation came about thanks to the disasters Bob started to cause after going to deliver a Krabby Patty. Bob initially tries to make amends for his mistake. He even asks Patrick to help him clean up, but they end up creating more problems than they solve, which ends up infuriating the cleaning robot. The robot attacks them multiple times in a lethal way, so both are forced to use a tank to end the threat. Which is even weirder than the previous example, because beyond having a killer robot mode, it has tools of destruction not at all necessary for a cleaning robot. And we could go on mentioning more examples, with some that end in disaster. But there are also robots that behave in a more normal way, apparently, such as those that serve several locals in Bikini Bottoms, including customers at Weenie Hut Jr.'s. And we can't forget Squidward's house, which, as we discussed in a previous video, is a sort of mechatronic with its own intelligence. One detail that Alex Bale got wrong is that he mentions that in the Good Neighbors episode, Squidward installs a security system in his house, for free, suspiciously. And it's a system that turns his house into a mechatronic with almost military-grade technology and great destructive capabilities. But as we mentioned in that video, the house was already smart before the system was installed. So we can't attribute the life of the house to being behind that security system. Although we could attribute many of its new giant robot functions to it. But now, how does it all connect? Well, there is a recurring character in the series who has shown a tendency to invent robots over and over again to carry out his malevolent plans. Sheldon J. Plankton. On more than one occasion, he has tried to steal Krabby Patty's secret formula using robots. In the classic imitation crabs, Plankton quickly designed two robots to try to get the formula from Bob. With one quite similar to Mr. Krabs, Plankton has also created robotic versions of SpongeBob, the best known being the robot that appears in Welcome to the Chum Bucket, where Plankton only needs Bob's brain to make the robotic version of him work. And the second time he did something similar was in the Christmas special of Season 8 where he creates Toy Bob, a robotic version of Bob looking like Chrome, with a built-in flamethrower and can get bigger. In the Season 9 episode Plankton's Pet, Plankton creates a baby-inspired robot to try to go unnoticed on the shelled crustacean, an idea that apparently may have been seeded in him since Season 5, when he sees a mother making comments about how helpless her baby looks. Interestingly, the baby's appearance is very similar to the robot Plankton creates a few seasons later. This is in addition to what we see in the episode My Leg. In this episode we see Fred, a fish who appears several times as a supporting character, and constantly has accidents where he breaks his leg in one way or another. After going to the hospital, the doctor tells him that if he continues leading this kind of life, he will have to amputate his leg and take a leg off his robot from the hospital to use it as a prosthetic for Fred. And curiously, the robot turns out to have almost the same design as the one created by Plankton in the episode Plankton's Army. Another invention that appears in the series and is one of the most disgusting is the whirly brains, which is sold as a toy that allows you to put propellers to your brain and detach from the body without destroying the person in the process. The chapter never says who the inventor of the whirly brains is, but given Plankton's experience in successfully extracting brains while keeping the original individual alive, we could associate these whirly brains to him, since through such an invention he can actually study from the Bikini Bottom fish without them knowing the true intentions behind this supposed toy. Yes, disturbing. Something we must remember is that Plankton, beyond simply wanting to steal the Krabby Patty's formula, is not the only one who has the intention of stealing the Krabby Patty's formula. What he wants is to be able to dominate the world, and in his view, one of the most optimal ways to accomplish this goal is through the Krabby Patty. So with his experiments with robots and using several of his inventions as ways to fool the Bikini Bottom population, the theory postulates that Plankton has secretly managed to get closer to his real goal, for it has gradually infiltrated its technology into the daily lives of these fish, blending into all sorts of establishments and services. And if that wasn't enough, it seems that a long time ago it managed to replace one of the main characters with a robot, or at least have partial control of him. And that is the most interesting point of all this. The character in question is Patrick Star, who from the beginning has proven to be one of the most inconsistent characters throughout the series. For despite his stupid nature, he has moments where his intelligence comes to the fore. Most importantly, these displays of intellectuality began to be more marked from a season 4 episode Patrick Smartpants, where after falling off a cliff and losing his head, or by accident he replaces it with a kind of intelligent coral. It is never really detailed the existence of these corals and why they are abandoned near the jellyfish field. But we know that once Patrick's head is connected, this artifact is shown to have gears and a totally mechanical and artificial functioning, which leads Patrick to reason and act differently than usual. But by the end of the episode, he apparently returns to normal once they find his real head, although he never really goes back to being the same. A crystal clear example of this comes in the episode Squid-tastic Voyage, where Bob and Patrick shrink down to get Squidward's mouthpiece out of his clarinet. But when they are stuck and in danger, Patrick suggests the following.
Could make a big enough burp.
We could filter the CO2 through our ballast tanks, refire the engines, and ride the shockwave out of here.
Wow.
Added to that in other episodes like Hocus Pocus and Money Talks, SpongeBob versus the Patty Gadget, we see sparks and smoke coming out of his head when he tries to think too hard. And on one occasion, we even see the same gears reappear as when he had the robotic head. Which leads to the conclusion that he really never fully returned to normal after his accident in the jellyfish field, and at times, he has some glitches or errors that allow him to access more knowledge to give some more accurate answers. But this only lasts for a few seconds. And to top it off in the Goofy Scoopers episode of the 13th season, Patrick shows Bob the back of his head where several people have signed. But the weirdest thing is the signature that says Plankton was here. It would be more or less like a mark of who created all these modifications. So the theory suggests that Sheldon J. Plankton has used and manipulated Patrick at some point in the past, with possible modifications that could turn him into a cyborg of sorts, with the programming of a normal Patrick, but being an infiltrated agent to eventually carry out the invasion. If we take into account that on more than one occasion Plankton has tried to manipulate Bob to carry out his plans without much success, we can see that he has been used as an infiltrator. Perhaps by getting closer to his enemies through Patrick, he can accomplish what he failed to do with SpongeBob. It also makes sense that Plankton would have been one of those responsible for giving Squidward's house some level of intelligence. Since being close to Bob and Mr. Krabs, it's a way for him to keep spying on his rival, with eyes and ears everywhere. Besides, Squidward is an employee with much more seniority in the Krusty Krab, so it is logical that Plankton has started spying on them through him. Thus, eventually Bikini's Bottom will fall to the robot menace, bringing the future of episode SB-129 back to reality. In case you are not aware or do not remember, in this episode we see that after arriving in the future, Squidward meets Spongetron and Patron, the best name in life, and he encounters a future where everything is chrome-colored, and the sea dwellers he sees are robots, or at best, cyborgs. In fact, this is not the only indication of a robot invasion in the future. For in a deleted scene from the second SpongeBob movie, we are shown a denouement where, upon returning to normal, Bob and Plankton were to find a Bikini Bottom version that was taken over by evil cyborgs. Also in the Back to the Past chapter, after taking a time machine, Bob and Patrick modify the timeline, and after returning to Bikini Bottoms, it is robots who are in charge of reinforcing the authority of Man Ray, who has taken over the city. So, regardless of whether they make slight or significant changes to the timeline, the future has a constant: the presence of robots or cyborgs that predominate over organic life. There's even the video game battle for Bikini Bottom, which even seems to be part of the continuity of the series, thanks to Prawn's cameo in the episode Captain Pipsqueak. Prawn appeared as a mini-boss in the game, forming part of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's extensive gallery of villains. The story of this game focuses rightly on an army of robots created by Plankton to destroy the Krusty Krab. But the moment he saw them, he forgot to put the machines in an obedience mode, so they end up rebelling and wreak havoc in the city. And if the events of the game took place in the official chronology, it means that Plankton has already tried to carry out his plans to conquer the world with a robot invasion and failed miserably. This detail is interesting because we could say that the theory is wrong since the invasion failed, but it is not so simple, since there are many more evidences that we must examine, and that have come to light after the release of Alex Bale's video. First of all, the part about Patrick being replaced or modified by Plankton to be a robot or cyborg spy makes sense to some extent. Although I'm not so sure it was fair as Alex postulates. For starters, Patrick wasn't always a complete idiot, as in the early seasons he had moments where he demonstrated capabilities and competencies far beyond what we see today. In fact, in the episode Squidward, the unfriendly ghost, Patrick tries to CPR Squidward, even though he mistakes him for a wax statue. This, apart from proving that he is not 100% stupid, comes with a curious comment. Patrick tells Bob not to worry about Squidward, that he's going to be fine as he has quite a bit of experience with head injuries, which brings up another possibility. It may be that Plankton has taken advantage of those constant injuries to modify Patrick bit by bit, and that what we see in the episode where he loses his head is just a culmination of years of work. And that would explain why he wasn't a complete idiot before what happened with that coral. I also don't think Patrick is the only character that has undergone modifications, as recently evidence was found that Mr. Krabs could also be one of them. In the chapter, Mr. Krabs takes a vacation after going to visit the Bikini Bottom Mint and becoming ecstatic with the whole process and the money found there. Mr. Krabs' eyeballs burst. Curiously, SpongeBob says he had foreseen something like this, so he takes with him a box with spare parts for Mr. Krabs' eyes, which are similar to light bulbs that when fitted into the crab's head and pressed on his nose, take on an appearance very similar to his normal eyes. This means that first of all, Mr. Krabs has replaceable parts in his body, similar to robots. And also from Bob's testimony, it is clear that this is not the first time something like this has happened. There is also the episode of the missing key, where Mr. Krabs shows a golden key that is able to open his chest to reveal his heart, which for me is a very clear proof that it is a cyborg. If you want to know a little more, I leave you the video of the user Gumball Watterson, to whom we send a greeting and cuddles for being a big fan of Lulya. But if Krabs is a robot, it falls back to the original theory, doesn't it? After all, if Eugene already belongs to this army of evil cybernetic beings, it means that Plankton should have already obtained the secret formula a long time ago, which in turn would render Plankton's more recent attempts to steal the formula or take down the Krusty Krab useless. I was thinking about that when I got around to watching an episode that came out literally a few weeks ago. It's titled PL40 Monthrine and was originally announced as a sequel to the legendary SB-129. Though in reality each has separate plots, their only common factor being the futuristic setting where everything is chrome on a bikini bottom. In PL1413, Sandy creates a time capsule to preserve memories of the Bikini Bottom inhabitants, and so that 2000 years from now, descendants can have a glimpse into the city's past. Krabs decides to place a Krabby Patty in the capsule, believing it may have high value in the future. And seeing this opportunity, Plankton rushes into the capsule to take the Krabby Patty, but ends up locked in the artifact. As the capsule is being submerged, Karen, Plankton's robotic wife, shows up, and although her husband asked for her help to get out, she decides to leave him there for 2000 years. We have already seen that Karen and Plankton have had marital problems, but I never thought it could get to the point of abandoning Plankton to his fate locked up for 2000 years in a capsule. Interestingly, once that time has passed, upon leaving his prison, Plankton finds himself in the future we already know, where everything is chrome. And he is very happy because after eating Krabby Patty molecule by molecule for 2000 years, he already has the secret formula. Fish have advanced technology, and in fact there are several individuals that have modified themselves to survive the passage of time. Patrick, for example, is the most surprising of all, as his future version is considered to be P1000. This new Patrick is a shapeshifter, who sometimes adopts Patrick's familiar silhouette, but who can also transform himself into his own house and into whatever he wants. However, his all-chrome look and red eyes give him a very sinister air, and he even tries to eat Plankton. SpongeBob, on the other hand, also survived. He is a kind of cube that can only project his mouth, with which he can only communicate through laughter. Yes, it seems that in the future, he has not been friendly with anyone. And although Squidward's music is now considered classical music, everyone started listening to it the day after his death. So he didn't do well either. But the one who does look happy is Karen. She is now a chrome-colored orb who has access to more technology than ever before, and she's perfectly happy selling chrome paints. Without going into unnecessary details, in the end, Plankton decides to return to his own time. What he achieves thanks to a time machine built by Sandy. And there is a strange crossover with Camp Coral, because it is the Sandy of the past, who is now a time traveler. Once the Sheldon of the past leaves for his own time, it is revealed that Karen was hiding another version of her husband, named Plankton 2.0, who now has blonde hair and a gigantic muscular body with a winner's attitude. This new Plankton gets along much better with his wife and takes her home to do unspeakable things. At first glance, the episode seems to take away from the strength of the theory. I mean, yes, there are a lot of robots and cyborgs, but it doesn't seem like they've taken over society the hard way or anything. It's a much less post-apocalyptic future than the one Alex Bale sold us on. But there is one detail that I thought was interesting. There was only one character who really benefited from all of this. Karen. Yes, even Plankton couldn't use the secret formula, because in the future everyone knew about it. And when he gets to the past, Sandy wipes his memory of the hit with a pipe. Those two details made me realize that there's a second possibility. What if Plankton isn't the only one interested in a machine-controlled future? What if someone else was pulling the strings all along? Someone like, I don't know, a robot who would benefit immensely from a rebellion. But she doesn't necessarily want to rule the world with an iron fist. Yes, obviously I'm talking about Karen, and the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. For example, she would be the only other character who could have modified Mr. Krabs, and she would have had to have done it without her husband's knowledge. That would be a problem, except that the episode gives us evidence that just that happened. In the future, everyone knows the Krabby Patty formula. And I'm 200% sure that Mr. Krabs would take his secret to his grave, and SpongeBob would never betray the memory of his boss. None of them would reveal the formula, and there is only a third person, or should I say robot, who knows said secret formula. In the episode Lockdown for Love, Plankton constantly ruins his anniversary dates with Karen because he is chasing the secret formula. She gets annoyed with him and shuts down the chum bucket until Plankton proves his love for her without interruption. But obsession gets the better of him, and Plankton uses Patrick in disguise to drop him off on his date with Karen, while he chases the formula. The details are unimportant, but in the end, Karen is so impressed with Patrick's date disguised as Plankton that she offers him a special gift, the Krabby Patty formula. It turns out that after years of research and work, Karen was able to synthesize the formula in digital form, which means she is the only other person, or robot, with access to the formula. Then she discovers Plankton's shenanigans and doesn't give it to him. Obviously, but this little detail is super important. We don't know what data she's talking about exactly, but even leaving aside that she surely already made the formula public in the future, she may have had access to Mr. Krabs' secrets or Mr. Krabs himself to synthesize the formula. And truth be told, it makes perfect sense that Karen would help Plankton with his plans for robot domination, but have her own secret fifth, behind her husband's back. Recall also that all of these robots have a built-in attack mode, a secret mode that sometimes even Plankton himself doesn't seem to know about. This means that Karen has been creating a scenario where machines have a promising future. Subduing those who are a threat, such as Patrick, who became a chrome aberration, SpongeBob, who met a terrible fate, and Mr. Krabs, who is a cyborg today. All this while the robots we saw in SB-129 are just that, robots, products of centuries of experimentation on Karen's part. I suspect this because of the existence of Plankton 2.0, which is evidently a robotic Plankton created to be the perfect husband for Karen, and shows us very clearly that she has been creating robots. This would also explain why Karen left Plankton locked in the capsule, as she has reached a point where she simply doesn't need him anymore to carry out her plans, as she has everything she needs to set her invasion in motion without her husband interfering. Besides, By this point, he already made his own revolution with robots, and it went quite wrong. Now, Karen is the one in control of everything, but surprisingly it seems that her ends were much less malevolent than those of her husband. The robot invasion did not seek total world domination, but a different future. A future in which Karen could fit in without any problems. So I hope you liked this video. Like it if you did and subscribe for more videos like this. Remember that the original theory is Alex Bale's, not ours, and see you in the next video. Bye.